They were the heroes from the future. Teenagers protecting the universe from those that would sow the seeds of chaos. Each had unique powers and abilities. And though they often had their differences, they came together to save the day as the Legion of Superheroes. Now, you can be a part of their adventures and learn the history of the future in the Legion Clubhouse.
This week on the Legion Clubhouse, Secret, someone's got a secret. Legion of Superheroes number 42. There's a spy amidst us.
The spy who loved Dirk.
I don't think she did. There's a difference, right? So when you had Yara, she was actually in love with Colossal Boy.
Eventually, yeah.
Laurel Kent doesn't care for anybody. It's all a charade. From the very beginning, it's a charade. She has zero feelings because, surprise,
she's a robot.
She's a robot.
She's been a robot all along. And of all the post-crisis, we have to get rid of Superboy and all traces of Superboy retcons. I feel like this is one that at least feels like plot motivated. A little tortured, but plot motivated. I feel like, the greatest story ever told.
I'm not sure I would agree with you in that from the very beginning, I don't think Laurel Kent was a robot, right? It was, oh no, she's a descendant. And then as a situation came up and they're sitting around the writer's room and everyone's like, Paul Levitz, what are you going to do about this whole Laurel Kent thing? And he's like, and then they're like, hey, we've got a big event coming up. Why don't you turn her into a robot? And he's like, yes, I'll do it because she is technically a nobody for the Legion. She's like a guest star on a TV show where she doesn't play a big role until they need her to play a big role. And so I feel like in the long run, if you look at Laurel Kent from beginning to end, it feels very much like she is a character that is there for the whim of the writer in whatever situation they need, like the scapegoat, right?
Laurel's first appearance was absolutely late Silver Age, early Bronze Age. Dun, dun, dun. She only existed as a plot point to end up that storyline. But the same can be said of a couple of people who are still in the Legion. Element Lad was the same way back when he was Mystery Lad. And I feel like while Laurel is not a major character, I feel like when you say, hey, when you look at this run, the Volume 3 Legion in the 80s, where it became clear that they were going to have to basically remove anything that overtly referred to the childhood of Superboy, Superman being a young Superboy, the things that had to disappear slowly disappeared a bit by bit as it became clear that no matter how many times we said, okay, we've taken care of this. No, wait, we haven't. No, we have to go. Oh, wait, what about Mon-El? Okay, now we have to. Okay, wait, well, no, we got to. Okay. This one ties into, first of all, something that the Legion doesn't usually do, the big overarching universal crossover. But it also kind of makes more sense, except in as much as, the story is not necessarily executed in a way that I like. But having the explanation of Laurel be, well, she's never been what she seemed, because now what she seemed to have been is impossible. It's kind of
that's what I'm saying. It's just she's just a scapegoat for whatever shenanigans they need to do.
Well, that's not what I'm saying at all.
No, but that's what I'm saying is the way you're describing it is totally, she is just like, hey, we need somebody to do this. Oh yeah, there's that Laurel Kent. Let's have her do it. This could have very easily been some other member of the Legion who has been mysterious and spooky. It could have been some other person who's still in school. They're just like, oh, well, we need somebody to do this. Let's make Laurel do it. And the story and the appearance of her throughout all of her appearances now make even less sense than anything else.
But I think that that's also the strength of the Legion, is that if you go back, Laurel appeared at this point almost 15 years earlier. Laurel's first appearance was in like 76. So you really do have that kind of a deep bench of characters that could have been Manhunters if you absolutely had to have.
I'm saying you don't even need her to be a Manhunter. You don't even need to have her be a robot. If you want to get rid of Laurel Kent because of some crisis event, she just went back to her planet and was never heard from again.
Right, but they're not going to do that. That is something that Paul Levitz has shown he's not capable of doing. I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying. That's
a 4-issue crossover.
That's a failure of this character, and I think a disservice to the character.
I feel like this is the most served the character has ever been, because she literally initially was just a Philip in a story where Superboy had a crush on her because she superficially resembled Lois Lane. And every other appearance of Laurel has just kind of been she's like had a big asterisk floating over her head that says, oh, but she can never be a Legionnaire because her only power is duplicated. So she's never had a chance to be a Legionnaire. They made that clear in her second appearance when she showed up and was like, now I'm in the Legion Academy, learning to do something with my invulnerability. But I feel like this is probably the most she's ever had to do. I mean, can you remember Laurel Kent ever really doing anything?
That is my exact point. So here's the thing. They created a character. Oh, she's related to Superboy because whatever, blah, blah, blah. Hey, we no longer have a Superboy. We no longer need a Laurel Kent. Okay, great. She's not a member. She can just disappear. She can just go back and live among the peoples. We don't ever have to show her ever again. That's the whole thing. We do not have to show Laurel Kent ever again. If they decide to take a know-nothing character and make her disappear, no one is going to ask questions. So instead of just doing that, the logical thing, what they're doing is saying, let's push her forward and make her the scapegoat for this crossover event that is being forced upon us. And that will explain everything. And everyone is just supposed to sit there and go, oh, yeah, okay. And that's not the case. Everyone should be sitting there going, this feels like a cop-out. This feels like just a know-nothing reason to bring her into the spotlight. And she doesn't need to be brought into the spotlight. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I absolutely disagree. I think this is using Laurel the way they use her here is actually, it's almost, I won't say ingenious, but it is definitely a good use of an existing character. And
I'm just going to have to disagree with you on that.
Oh, absolutely. But it does the double duty of taking the problematic character off the field and making a memorable moment out of it. Whether Levitz was told he had to be a part of Millennium or not,
I'm going to guarantee you
this is more memorable than the last few issues.
I'm going to guarantee you that with the success of Crisis, every event had to be an all-book event. Every title in the DC stable had to be tied into whatever it is. And in this case, I think this is the first big event after Crisis, right? Millennium.
No, this is the second. Millennium came after Legends.
Right, Legends. We've already seen what happened with Legends. Oof. We now see the Legion forced into this Millennium story about essentially DC forming its own Guardians of the Galaxy, and in the process, the Manhunters are back. Manhunters, by the way, I don't think had been around since the early Silver Age or even Golden Age.
The Manhunters had been around because Paul Kirk, who was the Silver Age Manhunter who appeared in first issue special back in 75, had popped up. He had been in the Justice League. There was a rather large storyline in Justice League in 81 or 82 where we discovered that the Manhunters were still pseudo-active. So they weren't that far out of the spotlight when Millennium came around, maybe 5 years, but
I don't have a problem with the Manhunters. I really don't. I think that they're an interesting concept. When they appear and people are reading them, and I've had some appreciation for Manhunters. I think there's some oftentimes confusion because you have human characters that are in no relation, shape, or form related to the robot Guardians of the not Guardians of the Galaxy, the Guardians of Oa. First attempt at creating a military force. And so I can dig on the Manhunters. Making Laurel a Manhunter that, I mean, this is how silly this story is. the Manhunters need to know everything, and they know something is going to happen in the future. That so what they do is they take one of their robots and they put it into hibernation, but because Manhunters are dumb, they miscalculated. And so therefore her programming is flawed. Therefore I must blow up now. Kaboom. It's not well thought out, I don't think, from that perspective.
I think that within the context of Millennium, which the whole thing about Millennium, their big, their hook was that anyone could be a Manhunter. So, throughout the DC universe, we saw characters. We saw Rudolph West, Wally West's father, being outed as a Manhunter spy. We saw a member, I can't remember now, Rocket Red, #1 of the Justice League.
Yeah.
Lana Lang was shown to have been a spy for the Manhunters. So within that context,
so the Legion had two Manhunters?
No.
It wasn't Lana the Bee Queen or whatever?
She was before the Crisis, but remember, all that Superboy stuff was taken out. That story, the Insect Queen story, would have had to have happened on
but if
she's
always been a Manhunter, it counts for all of continuity. So the Legion have had two Manhunters amidst their ranks. Don't you think Brainiac should have known something was up? Don't you think Brainiac's curiosity should have been like, have you ever noticed that Laurel Kent never eats or sleeps or breathes, or when she got shot, she leaked motor fluid and not blood?
And, Saturn Girl read her mind multiple times.
Yeah.
They make conciliatory remarks towards that. They say Brainiac says in this issue that Laurel is so advanced that, we couldn't even tell. Tellus could read her mind. They couldn't tell that she wasn't human. But, when you take that Millennium Crisis crossover, the big mess, into effect, I feel like, for all intents and purposes, if you had to bring the Legion in for 2 issues, this is not a bad way to do it.
No, I mean, I can see the reasoning behind it. They could have also just, without the Laurel Kent thing, they could have just been, this creature appears out of nowhere and is smashing into the Legion lab and then reveals that he's a Manhunter put, in stasis until the right time to wake up. And you would have had the exact same storyline.
No, you wouldn't, because the whole point of the Millennium was that, oh no, our friends are turning against us. It had to be someone, at least almost all of the Manhunter robots, androids, spies, whatever you want to call it, had to be someone that had some sort of emotional resonance. So if you'd have said, one of the substitute heroes was a Manhunter, I think you could have gotten away with it. Or, they name check the Wanderers, who are about to get their own book in this issue. If one of the Wanderers had popped up and, all along he's been a Manhunter or she's been a Manhunter.
Yeah.
I feel like using Laurel does double duty. It gets her off the table so you don't have to go, wait, because you're right. Brainiac should have gone, hey,
I've been around for 15 years.
If Superboy doesn't exist, how is Laurel his great granddaughter? But 12th level brain and all. So I feel like the execution of this story is what bugs me. I feel like we get into this and it's like, that's kind of an interesting premise. But then rather than do something, Laurel shows up and she's like, ha, I am going to steal knowledge from the Legion computer.
I love it.
I'm not.
She's like, I need your computers. Smash cut to her destroying all of the computers by throwing them at various members of the Legion. It's like, you're not a very smart robot. And that's probably why her program hit was messed up for 1,000 years.
See, and that's the thing. I can't tell. I feel like we're supposed to, and once again, it's not something that Levitz really calls out or successfully shows us. I think we're supposed to believe that, we know that her memory is corrupt. She says at one point, I wonder if Superman felt like this. I wish I could remember, because she is over 1,000 years old. So we're supposed to, get the feeling that her memory is messed up. She does not know where the immortals that she seeks are. Spoiler alert, they were canceled in 1989, but that's not the point here. I feel like, when we get to the point where, okay, so Laurel's like, I'm going to beat you all up. Arg. Oh, no, I'm a Manhunter. And here's in the middle of issue 41, we get this one-page story. 42, forgive me.
Yeah.
We get this one-page thing about, here's the backstory
the history of the Manhunters. Well, and to be fair, there's a good chance that anybody who's reading the Legion have never heard of the Manhunters. I don't think I've heard of the Manhunters until the Millennium event happened. And then I was like, okay, I can get on board with this. Let me see. And then as I started reading older stuff prior to, 85, 83, starting to read other stuff, then I'm like, okay, now I have a better idea of who the Manhunters are and what their whole deal is. So I can see having a one-page explainer saying, here's who they are. Right. I don't have a problem with that.
And coming out of the Crisis on Infinite Earths, they were still kind of at a point where, things weren't 100% locked down, set in stone. Remember, the Hawkman problems are still
Oh, no, that's going to bring up a big question here pretty soon.
Yeah, and there are these questions of what's going on, what are the rules of this new reality, who is who, what is where, and everything along those lines. But there's also the underlying thread of first of all, they're unraveling the Green Lantern Corps.
Mm-hmm.
Because coming out of Millennium, I think it is, the Green Lantern Corps is mostly depowered, and eventually it turns into 8 Green Lanterns headquartered on Earth.
Yeah.
But,
you do.
If you look at, it happens. They kill off the Green Lantern Corps in its entirety every 5-10 years. But the point of Millennium was to try and show us that there was the possibility for change. So coming out of that book, the Outsiders were canceled. A member of Infinity Incorporated was killed. We had a whole bunch of things. Blue Beetle and Booster Gold were coming to the end of their runs. And so their books fell apart, and they kind of wrote it off as, the Millennium was so terrible that Blue Beetle and Booster Gold were left basically homeless and penniless, and they had to go and be in the Justice League International and, steal cooey and go through all of that nonsense. But that they were trying to, give us big changes. Firestorm had just been through a big change. The first time we ever saw someone different in the Firestorm Matrix, and so they were trying to do big new era stuff. The problem that you have is that, as we see with Laurel Kent, sometimes when you push these things, it pushes things out of shape, and then the DC universe, the writers naturally.
That rubber band does not snap back.
Not all the time.
If you enjoy the show, we would appreciate your support. You can find out more and become a Legion Clubhouse member at patreon.com/major spoilers.
All right, so I said that we were going to talk about Hawkman, because this is something that after reading this issue and with the recent Action Comics issue that came out, who did more to screw up the post-crisis, Mon-El or Hawkman?
Definitely Hawkman.
You don't think Mon-El? Because again, you can't have Mon-El without Superboy. And Superboy didn't exist.
You can have Mon-El without Superboy. It's just, the name Mon-El kind of becomes meaningless.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about Mon-El. Mon-El's damage was relatively contained. Mon-El's damage was in the 30th century continuity. The problem with Hawkman was that immediately after the crisis, Hawkman became a member of the Justice League for several issues. Hawkman and Hawkgirl.
Right.
Now, both of whom no longer existed. The Silver Age Hawkman and Hawkgirl were no longer a thing. They had been taken out of continuity. And so we have this point where, okay, we have Alien Hawkman and Alien Hawkgirl showing up in the Justice League. As part of this crossover, I believe there's a big crossover. Do you remember when we read Animal Man?
Yeah, and there's also Hawkworld is coming up too. So
Hawkworld is coming up, and Hawkworld is the story that says there was never an alien police officer from Thanagar who came to Earth.
Right.
After we had already seen 3 years of alien Thanagarian police officer. And so then they're like, oh, well, how did this happen? Okay, well, eternal incarnation is already part of the gimmick. Mm-hmm. So we throw that in. Oh, wait, no, that won't work. We have to explain, how did he join the League? Okay, well, that was a Thanagarian spy named Fel Andar. And Fel Andar was part of the Justice League. But then 0 Hour is like, oh, it turns out that they're all the same guy, time, space, and dimension.
Yeah.
And it got really complicated because you could either do, I have, this thing where I eternally reincarnate and I've got this Egyptian theme, or you could do, I'm a weirdo alien. But it wasn't until like 2010, I think, that they came up with the idea that, reincarnation doesn't mean that he reincarnated on Earth.
Right.
So essentially, Katar Hol of the planet Thanagar is a reincarnation of Carter Hall.
I think the easy
planet Earth.
I think the easy thing that they could have done is just said, hey, these two are refugees from, Earth 1. As everything collapses, Superman and Lois of Earth 2 technically wander off into their happy sunset, but the Halls are refugees on this planet, which they kind of technically did that with Power Girl and Mr. Terrific in the whatever the heck that reboot was that they did not too long ago.
That was in 2011. That was during the New 52.
Yeah.
The thing that's important to remember is coming out of the crisis, Earth 1 and Earth 2 mentioned
weren't supposed to, were verboten. I get that. But see, then that's where you get into, you open up the pages of Legion of Superheroes and there's Mon-El. And it's like, well, wait a minute, how do we square this? Until then you get to this weird story of, oh no, Mon-El is from a pocket dimension that only included, Krypton and Earth. And it's like, okay, so where did Mon-El come from then? And so it really becomes this weird thing of, what do we do with a person like Maria? What do we do with a person like Mon-El in this case, who is also a character out of his space and time, literally, because of the crisis? Now, the answer, of course, is, hey, just wait for us to reboot the Legion and we'll call him Valor, and then everything will be cool. But I still think even with that recent Action Comics thing where Superman's in the Phantom Zone and he runs into Mon-El, it's like, is Superboy back? Is that stuff back? Is we've had so many reboots and relaunches of the DC universe over the years. It's like, how does Mon-El fit into all this again? And doesn't that cause collapse and chaos and all of that? And so that's why I asked the question. And dear listeners, please write in podcast@majorspoilers.com and let us know who did more to screw up post-crisis, the very existence of Mon-El continuing in the Legion of Superheroes, or Hawkman. Yeah, issue 43, Matthew. Everything goes to crap.
Yeah, it definitely goes down the drain. And
I mean, I don't mind big fight sequences. Fight sequences are pretty cool. You get a lot of people doing action stuff. I find that all super fascinating. Levitz is learning from the X-Men method of let's, sprinkle in some other stories of things that are coming up. But for the most part, there's a lot of nonsense going on in this issue, I think.
I definitely agree, because we do get part of the problem that we get to is, okay, so the new Guardians, the Immortals that thumbnail, the Millennium, a Guardian, and a Zamaron, who are the women of the planet Oa, who went off to their own planet, came to Earth, said, okay, we're going to create these new Guardians of the universe, we're going to go away, we're going to die, blah, 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 fish cakes.
Yeah.
These 8 people were empowered, and one of them was Tom Kalmaku, who was Green Lantern's friend who had the racist nickname back in the 60s. And they became the new Guardians. And they were written by Steve Englehart, and they were written in a way that was very, very, I'm going to say exuberant, but it did not last. And so they didn't know any of this at this time. But by the time, 1,000 years had gone, nobody's going to remember anybody but Gregorio de la Vega. But nonetheless, all of that is gone. Laurel is like, I'm going to find the Immortals. I'm going to kill them and eat them. So
why would they hang around Earth, right? I mean,
right. That's
why. If you were immortal and you had space travel, you could go anywhere. And so,
and if you hung around on Earth, why would you go to the Amazon basin, first of all?
Is it the Amazon basin or the Grand Canyon? I forget where they ended up at.
They start out the Amazon.
Yeah.
And they get attacked by the cultists, the last remaining Manhunter cultists.
Right.
And then Laurel ends up in the Grand Canyon. Right. And Laurel's like, come on.
I miscalculated. I must go back to my planet.
To find you. You know, she hits snooze once too often.
And then they go back. Then they go back to the Tibetan temple again. So it's like we're going to fly around the world. I think who is arting this one up? Greg LaRocque and Mike DeCarlo.
LaRocque and DeCarlo. Again.
It's almost like we need this to take place in a variety of different locations. And so it's like, here's the Amazon. Here's the Grand Canyon. Here is Tibet. And it's like, wow, all of this happens in the span of 28 pages. And then on top of that, we also get sprinkled in a bunch of other stories, which is great to set up future things. But I think it slows down this issue. This whole thing with what's going on with Quislet. Why is there a black hole in his dormitory? What's going on with Timberwolf and Dream Girl with their knowing looks to one another? What also is going on with Siobhan? No, it's not Siobhan Aaron. Siobhan. Siobhan is going to be the official liaison with the Legion. We also have Chameleon Boy going deep undercover as Nomad from Marvel Comics. I don't understand. Is there? So again, the whole Guardians of the Universe is very much to me Guardians of the Galaxy in the way that they're created, and they're kind of their premise. And then we end up with whatever Chameleon Boy is doing, to where he is just a Captain America riff. I'm just like, is DC at this time is riding pretty high on the post-crisis wave. Why are they still trying to snag ideas from Marvel?
I just want to say that I don't see any similarities between the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Guardians of the Universe.
Galaxy and Universe? One's bigger, one's smaller. One's trying to take from the other person.
You can't argue semantics like that.
Well, I mean, Marvel certainly did when they tried to take the what the heck was that one crisis event, and they were like, we are also going to call our big event
Identity Disc.
Yes, Identity Disc instead of Identity Crisis. So nothing surprises me. Nothing surprises me in this case. And I think there's like one more. Oh, and then Atmos shows up at the end and he's like, I'm going to join your crew too. And Polar Boy's like, wait a minute, only one person can stride into the room and declare themselves an automatic member of the Legion, and that's me. So it really sets up a bunch of stuff amidst this fight. And I don't know if this whole Manhunter, I think the Manhunter reveal did need to be 2 issues. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's enough content in the Manhunter story to fill 2 issues.
I think
because there's literally like 8-10 pages of other story stuff.
There definitely could have been, but I also think that part of this is that for an advanced android from the future, Laurel is an idiot.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, she busts in, I need this computer, and then she smashes it. And she's like, oh, I need to find this ancient city. And then she smashes it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, oh, no. Oh, wait. Turns out I can't do what I'm going to do. I'm just going to blow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you are truly a genius android from beyond the final star, I feel like you would come up with something a little bit more sophisticated than punchy, and explode.
So this happens to a lot of people that I know, where they will not admit that they've made a mistake. And Laurel doesn't admit in this issue before she blows herself up that she's made a mistake. Instead, she's passing the buck off on someone else. They programmed me wrong. It's always someone else's fault. It's not like, so you're right. Laurel is not intelligent. And I don't think she's ever done anything that shows that she has an intellect greater than Brainiac, or really maybe even greater than Dream Girl. And that's me giving her a compliment. So I don't think she was ever supposed to be a smart character. I think she's relying on a programming. And when push comes to shove at the end, instead of admitting that she made a mistake, she pushes the blame onto somebody else. They did this to me. Does not compute, blow up. And I think that's really interesting.
The subtext that her brain is broken.
Yeah.
Is definitely there. And I feel
the
like
hate tapes were
I do agree
on
with
skip.
you. Yeah. Her hate tapes were upside down, so she had ETA tapes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's here's the thing. If you were going to say, hey, I've got this Laurel Kent character, and I don't want to just let her, fade away into nothing. I want to take her out with a bang. Having her go out with a literal bang is a very, very ham-fisted way to do it.
Yeah.
But it does give that some closure. It does take another Superboy artifact off the field. And I feel like the one important part of this is it shows us the way to do a quote-unquote Legion crossover with time travel off the table.
Oh, man. Because, I cannot wait until the Eclipso event happens.
Dude. Come on. Don't be that guy.
I'm just saying, every book has to be part of every crossover event. That's the one thing that DC learned out of Crisis. And
Let me tell you something.
It gets wacky a lot.
Dude. Yeah, time travel will be back in 90 or 91, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But, at this point, you're just kind of like, hey, why is Tellus the smartest member of the Legion in these two issues? And the answer is clearly because LaRocque came in and lowered everybody's commensurate IQ by 10 points just by standing there with that big dumb face on his head.
And we haven't seen LaRocque in a long time. Or LaRocque.
Not LaRocque, forgive me. Atmos.
Yeah,
LaRocque,
yeah.
I like. I love LaRocque, actually.
Yeah.
Especially in his original costume that looks like Peter Pan got into a fight with Elvis, and then their costumes merged, and they just gave it to Fred the Hammer, and he's like, "Yes, I'm here."
Yeah. So I don't know. For me, I like the fights. I like that the Legion are forced into a big company wide event. I like that stuff. I'm not liking the fact that Laurel Kent is the fall guy, the scapegoat, to be in this thing. I do like in the second issue in 43. Where we are dropping some seeds for what's coming next, like what's the deal with Quizlet? I think that's kind of fascinating. I would say that this is probably, I don't know how they do the tiers. Is it SABDU? I don't know what the tiers are.
I don't know.
But this is kind of a mid-tier story. I don't think this is a great 2-issue story. I think it's just an okay mid-tier story.
Is that like some sort of Star Wars thing?
Yeah, there's a whole games ranking thing where you rank things by these tiers, and there's like S tier is the superior. Wait a minute, let's see it. Maybe we can have a guest person step in really quick in the form of Rodrigo Lopez. Let's see if we can dial him in. Rodrigo Lopez, are you there?
What's happening?
Hey man, I got a quick question. Can you explain those game tiers with like S, A, U, F, or whatever it is? Can you explain those really quick?
Sure. It's a pretty common thing you see on online nowadays. Basically, from top to bottom, you say we would normally say the highest one would be A tier or A plus tier, but in Japan, the top tier that something can be is called S tier. So it goes S and then everything you'd expect, except you skip the E, I think. So absolute bottom tier is usually F, and then the highest tier is S, then A, then B, then C, then D.
Yeah. So this is a solid B tier story. Thank you, Rodrigo, for stepping in and explaining this to the olds.
Yeah, I'll see you on the other show.
Yes. Speaking of the other show, we do have another show called the Major Spoilers Podcast that Rodrigo appears on all the time. And you can go check that out over at majorspoilers.com. So I would say, Matthew, that this is a B tier story.
I have long resisted tiering. I don't like it when people say someone is B list or C list. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I also feel like coming out of the Starfinger arc, which came out of the Death of Superboy 4-issue arc, I feel like this is better than the one, not quite as good as the other. I feel like the failings of it are obvious, but I also feel like a failing of execution and saying that they shouldn't have done it in the first place are two different arguments. So I feel like, yeah, definitely, this could have gone better, But on the plus side, Laurel Kent is off the field, and we got to see how ridiculous she looks in a Manhunter suit.
Yes. And why do robots need to wear clothes anyway? The Terminator didn't have to. He just did to conform to society's norms. No, he walked around naked. He actually walked around skinless for most of the stories in the future. Anyway, there you go. That wraps it up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for downloading and checking us out this week. Next time on the Legion Clubhouse, oh my gosh, what is the deal with Quizlet and Wildfire? Why are they in a quantum entanglement, maybe? Also, what's going on with Lightning Lad and the Luck Lords? You'll have to tune in next time on the Legion Clubhouse.
The Legion Clubhouse is a production of Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC, and is produced by Steven Schleicher. Your hosts were Matthew Peterson and Steven Schleicher. You can follow Matthew at Mighty King Cobra and Steven at Major Spoilers. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at Legion Clubhouse. If you have questions or comments, send them to podcast@majorspoilers.com. I'm Jason Inman. Until next time, eat it, Grandpa.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.